I have spent over 10,000 hours building a seven-figure business and helping nearly 1,000 people transform their financial lives through biblical stewardship. And I've learned so many things over the years. And among these hundreds of lessons, there are 8 extremely important faith-based habits that I truthfully wish that I knew when I started. And so these habits are probably what's stopping you from achieving true financial freedom while honoring God, which is a tough dance. And so most of these habits that I'm going to run you through only take 5 minutes or less each day, but they compound over time to create extraordinary wealth and spiritual peace. And so in this video, I'm going to share the exact 8 faith-based habits that took me from financial chaos, to say the least, to complete financial freedom while building a business that honors God in the process. And if you're a faith-based first person who is tired of living paycheck to paycheck and tired of the financial stress, but doesn't want to compromise your values to achieve financial freedom, then watch this entire video because these habits will change your life. Hang out with me. I promise you this is going to be a lot of fun. And so I'm going to start with habit number 1, which is Matthew 6:33. First, seek the kingdom of God and all these other things will be given to you. And I'll call this morning stewardship mindset, right? And so my specific morning routine is I wake up and the first thing I do actually is I do the Bible app with a couple of my friends and my wife, and we're doing devotionals in there. And so, when I wake up, I put my headphones on immediately and I just press play on those devotionals, money-based or not, right? It just gets me in that mindset of putting God first, hearing from God first, getting the energy, right? And the downloads and just the wisdom from God and just being in his presence immediately. And I'm doing this while, I'm letting the dogs out, right? And while I'm making a coffee, filling my water bottle, getting my little Bible study station set up at the dining room table, right? And, sometimes I'm sitting down and focused on it, but worst case scenario, the headphones are going in immediately. I'm pressing play on a devotional while I'm going around the kitchen, letting the dogs out, getting set up for my morning Bible study. And then I dive into the word, and I call this spending general time with God, right? Just simply seeking God, diving into his word, diving into prayer, diving into journaling what I'm hearing from him from a general standpoint. And I say a general standpoint, right? Because then after I'm done with that general time with him, we're just seeking God because I love him and want to learn more and want to start my day with him and honor him. Then I go into specific time, right? This specific time is about 15 minutes or more around kingdom money principles, where I'm actually studying what God wants us to know about money so I can align my money strategies and my money habits and my money energy and my overall stewardship with God and his word and what he's calling us to. And so I want to offer you all that for one. And then in the Bible app, there is so many devotionals where you could do a financial based one in there. And I've done multiple of them in there, right? And so some form of prayer and or study specifically around money each morning, I think is really important. And then a prayer that I pray is I always pray, I say, God, align my heart with yours, less of me, more of you, align my desires with your desires, and bless me with money so then I can use it as a resource to grow the kingdom, to make this world a better place, and use it in ways that bring people closer to you and not for selfish gain. Allow my choices to reflect my love and my faith for you, God. In Jesus' name, amen. And so that's how I start my morning off. And it gets me in that morning stewardship mindset where it reminds me I'm just being called to manage what God has blessed me with. And I need to call on him for wisdom and call on him for guidance and provision to align my heart with his, to make sure that my desires and my actions, particularly with my money, are glorifying him. So that's habit number 1. Habit number 2 is daily budget accountability. I always say you can't improve what you're not measuring, right? And so the majority of people's stresses and anxieties when it comes to money is caused by what I call subjectivity, right? Or just not knowing what's going on. Like, I think I'm spending too much. I think I need to make more money. I think I need to save more money. I think I should pay this off. All of that, I think, causes unnecessary stress and anxiety. We want to replace that with objectivity, black and white, like what's actually going on, and do we have a plan in place for your finances? When you can actually see what's going on and eliminate the subjectivity and have a plan in place with your finances, it's crazy how much more financial peace that you have and how much your stress and anxiety decreases. And so the system that we put our clients on only takes 1 to 3 minutes a day. The financial budget that I use and been using for 10 years now, all the way back from my corporate days to making multiple 7 figures. It's been the same system the whole time. It is 1 to 3 minutes a day. And so I do it in the morning, right? And so how I do that is, okay, I go and do my morning routine, spend my time with God, answer some client messages, right? And then I sit down here at my computer where I'm shooting this. And before I open up any other work, I'm just opening up my budget. I'm opening up my bank statement on my phone or maybe in another tab, budget in one tab, looking at what I spent and or made over the past 24 hours, reading the story, the numbers are telling me, okay, I got $150 left in eating out. I've got $200 left in groceries. Pretty much I've hit my income goal for the month. Great. Okay. And I'll take that information and go allow it to not only steer my emotions, but my decisions throughout the day. And so what I'm tracking specifically each day, right, are just my income and my expenses and my profit. So any quality budget has three sections: an income section, an expense section, and a profit or loss section. Profit or loss is just whatever is left over after you deduct your expenses from your income. And when it comes to your expenses specifically, there's two forms of expenses. You have your fixed expenses, which just are the same each month unless something crazy happens. But your fixed expenses can also be less frequent than monthly. It can be quarterly or annually. You also want to track and budget for those as well in the months that they are coming out. And so those are your fixed expenses. Your variable expenses are the ones that change each month. These are kind of the ones that we have a little bit of control over, right? Our groceries, our gas, our eating out, right? Our leisurely shopping, whatever we want to put in variable expenses in our budget, right? And so that, and then what is left over at the end of each month, right? So if I make $6,000, spend $4,000, it means I got $2,000 left over. And then also you want to have a mission for that money, right? So maybe a topic for a different lesson, but that's habit number 2, daily budget accountability. It doesn't have to be quantum physics, does not have to be fearful, does not have to be limiting or restricting. Honestly, if you're budgeting the right way, it should allow you to live your life, but in a calculated, controlled, and confident fashion. And it should only take 1 to 3 minutes a day. I promise you that. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. All right. Habit number 3, faith first tithing strategy. All right. So I like to talk about tithing first, not last, or tithing at the beginning of the month, the first of the month, the first 10%, right? The first fruits, right? Instead of waiting till when, honestly, it's convenient for you. So I'm coming at you from a place where this is how I used to do it. It took me a while to grow into consistent, faithful tithing. And I hate to use this word, but nothing else comes to mind, but I used to suck at it. But you gotta be bad at something first to ultimately grow into it, especially something that really tests and grows your faith and requires a decent amount of faith as well to do. And so I believe tithing on the first is the way to go. And I get that sometimes you're like, well, let me wait till the end of the month to see what I have left over. But although that may sound logical, what is logical isn't always biblical. And when you wait to see what's left over, that's not a tithe, that's a tip, right? God's not asking for a tip. He's not asking for convenience. He's asking for a tithe. And it should be uncomfortable because it's supposed to stretch your faith, right? It's to give God an opportunity to show that he provides, right? When you trust him, he provides. And so I want to reference Malachi 3:10, right? Malachi 3:10 says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." Sit with that for a second. One thing I want to point out though is, as I'm reading off the scripture here right now, and I'm highlighting it in front of me where I know you can't see that, but I'm going to emphasize where it says, "Test me in this." This is the only time in the entire Bible, which is a huge collection of a bunch of books. It's one big old book when you add them all up, right? A lot of words in there. Only time in this entire Bible that God says to test him is on this. Otherwise, testing God is blasphemy. But he's saying, test me on the tithing, right? And so I think ultimately what I want you to understand from a motive standpoint, we don't tithe to be blessed, right? We understand that being blessed could be a possible, I guess even God's even saying test him on this. There's almost guaranteeing it over time and in his capacity and his timing. But, understand that a blessing can be a possible side effect, right, of tithing. But we're tithing because we truthfully believe it's in our best interest. We truthfully believe God is calling us to do that. And just like anything, when we chase after God, right? We're truthfully doing it because we truthfully think that Jesus Christ is who he says he is, right? And so it just so happens that, a blessing or a reward or a door open can be a part of God's plan. And one thing I want you to realize too as well is that the blessing or the abundance or the prosperity that we unlock most of the times isn't materialistic or financial. It can be, right? But more importantly, it's going to be peace. It's going to be more faith in God. It's going to be the ability to bring other people closer to God, like those kingdom fruits. And sometimes, it could be prosperity. It could be materialistic. Or prosperity could be materialistic or financial, but that's up to God. I think sometimes we get that confused. When we think God rewards us or gives us abundance or prosperity, our mind immediately goes to only materialistic and financial stuff. And the truth is, a lot of times that's only a small portion of it, right? So I wanted to explain that right before we moved on and just understand that tithing helps build your faith, and it opens financial doors to freedom, true freedom, right? I know a lot of people that have a ton of money that on paper are financially free, but they're not because they actually don't feel free because they're idolizing the wrong thing. They have their faith and security in the wrong thing. And we'll get to that here in a moment. But, think about it as open-handed versus closed-handed. When you're giving, right, it reflects God's nature, right? And it also says that you trust him to provide. And so open-handedness versus closed-handedness. Closed-handedness is clenching on the money, right? Your hand is closed. Imagine God trying to pour blessings down on you and your hand's closed because you're clenching onto what you have out of fear, stress, and anxiety. What's going to happen? You're not going to catch any of the blessings he's trying to give you, but you open your hand, which is symbolic for giving, being generous, tithing, right? Trusting in the Lord. And when God pours down blessings on you, what's most likely going to happen? You're going to catch it because your hand's open, right? And so I wanted to give you that visual analogy before we move on to habit number 4, which is build an emergency fund, right? Build an emergency fund. And so, I'm going to talk you through some details of that. But when I first started building my emergency fund, I'm like, I know that there is at least some money in my budget that I can find either by cutting some unnecessary things out or strategically and intentionally making a little bit more money. Even if you can only save $100 a month, that is going to add up over the next 12 months. You'll have $1,200, right? So it's your choice if you want $0 or $1,200 over the next 12 months. Start small if that's all you have, right? And as you start to save and realize not only the importance of it, but the peace that comes with it, the excitement that comes with it, and the purpose that comes with it, right? You'll start to find ways to save more and more as you go. And so I tell people when it comes to having an emergency fund, have no less than 3 months because that's a risk, no more than 6 months because I think that's a little bit of a waste of money, right? And I'll explain that here in a moment. So 3 to 6 months of what, right? I would say your monthly expenses. A lot of people think it's their monthly income that they have to match, but it's really just the monthly expenses. So let's just say you need 3 months of emergency funds and your monthly expenses are $10K, right? 3 times 10 equals 30,000, which would be your emergency fund number. And so there's other videos on my page that break this strategy down even further around the emergency funds. But to give you kind of a more detailed plan on where to actually house this money, it would be a hybrid between what I would say is a basic checking account and a high yield savings account. So let's just say that your emergency fund number is 30K and you end up accomplishing that and have the 30K in your bank account. I would keep 15K in your basic checking account to be a buffer in between bills and paychecks, and put the other 15K in a high yield savings account, right? Which is just a fully insured savings account, but you actually make a little bit more money off of it. Depending on the time that you're watching this video, right, is going to dictate, how much you can make off of a high yield savings account. But as I'm shooting this video, you can make about 3 to 4% off of the money that you have sitting in the high yield savings account, 100% guaranteed and 100% insured with zero risk, right? It's not an investment. It's just a high yield savings account. It's the high yield means it makes more than your average checking or savings account. You'd be lucky if your basic savings account right now is giving you a 0.5%. So instead, you can go to a high yield savings account and have 4% being made on that money, which is going to be a heck of a lot more. And so that's how I would do it. 15K in the basic checking to be a buffer in between bills and paychecks, and 15K in the high yield savings account so you can make a little bit of money. Anything more than the 3 to 6 months, depending on how much you need, is going to be a waste of money. Because what I mean by that is while 3 to 4% is better than a 0.5%, you can have anything in access to your emergency fund invested somewhere else, right? To make more money, or maybe going towards debts to save more money, right? If you had a credit card at 25%, right? Having the money just sit in the basic checking account and access to your 3 to 6 months is wasting money because you're only making 4% when you could pay this bill off over here and save 25. So I hope that makes sense. But if you do want some help implementing some of the biblical stewardship principles I'm covering in this video, you can click the first link in the description to learn about my amazing coaching program called the Good Steward program. And so another habit that we help with largely inside of the Good Steward program, this would be habit number 5, which is strategic debt management. And so I think one thing is really important to understand is that there's a massive difference between good debt and bad debt, and not all debt is bad, right? Hear me when I say this. And so bad debt is buying things that you don't need with money that you don't have with no plan on how to pay it off at a high interest rate, right? It's going to the mall, balling out on things that you don't need when you don't even have that money. You got bills to pay, right? You got other things that you could be doing with that money, and you have no plan on how you're going to pay that 27% credit card off, right? Good debt is leveraging other people's money at a no cost or low cost to increase your value, your opportunities, and your wealth. Give you an example. Taking out a mortgage to buy a rental property, right? That rental property is going to make you money, build wealth for you and your family, and have an asset to pass on for generations to come. I think that's a pretty good form of debt. You probably agree, right? And so when it comes to my debt prioritization system, right, for advancing your financial freedom, I particularly say leverage good debt. Leverage good debt responsibly, right? Make sure you can afford the monthly payment. Make sure there's a plan, that there's a use for the funds where the rewards outweigh the risk, right? And you pray about it first, right? That's how you manage debt, good debt responsibly, right? Make sure God's actually in this. And so when it comes to paying off bad debt, we have to go after the worst debts first, right? So we have to ask ourselves, what are the worst debts? So the ones that are hurting your credit score, the ones that are costing you the most, and the ones that are stressing you out the most. And usually that's credit card debt, right? So, credit card debt is consumer debt. So when you have credit cards maxed out, it's hurting your credit score compared to when you have, let's just say, an installment loan, like a personal loan maxed out, right? Having an installment loan maxed out compared to a credit card maxed out, right? The credit card is going to hurt you much more because it's considered consumer debt compared to an installment loan. Installment loan is a much better form of debt, like a personal loan, car loan, student loan, mortgage, right? Consumer debt is credit card debt. And so that being capped out is hurting you the most. So let's go to that. And usually your credit cards are the highest interest rates or high interest rates, which in my opinion, a high interest rate is anything, above 15%. Some maybe say 10, 12%. But in my opinion, I'd say anything above 15% is like a fairly high interest rate. And usually most credit cards are. So attack those first. And to figure out which one, the third thing here is which one's costing you the most. It's not the one that has the highest interest rate, right? Because, for example, right, I mean, it could be, but necessarily there's some situations where it wouldn't be. And so give you an example. Let's just say you have a $20,000 credit card that has a 10% interest rate compared to a $5,000 credit card that has a 20% interest rate, right? Though 20% is more than 10%, right? 10% of 20,000 is a heck of a lot more than 20% of 5,000, right? So you would basically want to do the math. You would want to multiply the balance times the interest rate, and whatever the one has the largest number as the outcome is the one that's costing you the most. To go after that one. So I hope that helps with some debt management. And so the last thing is like, all right, how can you pay this off? Really when it comes to resources to pay this off, you either use your own money or OPM, somebody else's. For example, there's things such as 0% APR balance transfer credit cards, which means that, a lot of credit cards, they give you an introductory phase where the first 12 to sometimes 24 months, depending on the offer, it's 0% interest. And you can open one of those up and transfer the balance from the interest-bearing credit card over to that one and pay it off faster and easier and less expensive because there's no interest, let's just say for the next 12 months. So it makes the payoff much more manageable, right? And so you don't use that card for anything but to transfer the balance. You make equal monthly installment payments towards that over the next 12 months, 15 months, whatever the promotional period is. And that's done and taken care of, right? And off your plate. And so that would be an example of using OPM. Or if you've got credit cards at a 25% interest rate, you can take out a personal loan at 10% and wipe the credit card debt off and only pay 10% and also have an installment loan instead of consumer debt. That's a great strategy to use as well. Again, consult a professional before you do any of this. I don't know you. This is like, you might have some unique variables that need to be weighed and understood before you actually implement this strategy. But these are just some good ideas to start with and bring to trusted consult, bring to a trusted advisor. And again, inside of the Good Steward program, all of these things is exactly what we help our clients with to make best optimal decisions with. And so speaking of best optimal decisions, habit number 6, which would be automated stewardship, right? I would just automate as much as you can automate, whether that's the credit card payments, but particularly giving, saving, and investing. I don't mean automate your budget. By the way, let me put some clarity there, right? Automating your budget creates ignorance and neglect. You need to be able to look at the thing each day, right? Or at least a couple of times throughout the week. And that's why our system requires our clients to look at the budget 1 to 3 minutes a day, right? But when it comes to giving, saving, and investing, those are things we should definitely automate. I always tell the story when I first met my wife and I helped her start investing. When we first started living together and dating, I helped her start investing $600 on the first of every month. And she couldn't even save $600 before she was spending more than she was making all throughout meeting me. But when she met me, she wasn't making any more money. Nothing changed. I think her expenses might have went up a little bit because we moved in together, right? And so we had a little bit more of a rent, etc. But anyways, I just helped her automate her investments. And she invested $600 a month on the first of every month. A couple of years later, we got married and we combined our investment account. And I went to go look at how much she had in there. And I was like, oh my God, babe, you have that much money in there? That's crazy. And she was like, yeah, I mean, ever since I met you, I just started doing it on the first and it just added up. I just learned how to live without it. and it just automatically happened. I didn't even think about it, and now here we are. And so just such an awesome story. And just set it up in the first, set it and forget it. You'll learn how to live without it. And same thing with giving. The tithe, set that thing up for the first. Start somewhere. I would say, definitely 10% if you can, but worst case scenario, just start somewhere. Just start somewhere and start somewhere with it being automated, happening automatically, right? And so it just removes the emotion from the financial decision. Like, you're going to make up so many stories if you trust yourself to manually do that. Even if you say, I'm going to do it on the first manually, there's going to be so many excuses, stories, and delays behind that. And remember, delayed obedience is still disobedience, right? And so we want to remove the emotions by just autopiloting it, automating it, and you'll learn to live without it, right? And so the time's going to pass either way. It's our decision on how we want to utilize it. And so with that, let me go through the last two habits here. Habit number 7, which is investment in biblical wisdom. And so I give green lights for investing. And so again, this is general advice, right? Consult a trusted professional before implementing anything. But I ask people when they first come to us in the Good Steward program, I'm like, I'm not against investing and I want you to invest. We want to understand what's the best use of your funds. And so I always say the best use of your funds is to implement the foundations first, right? The foundations are paying off bad debt, right? Building an emergency fund, and the third one being a little bit looser than the first two, but buying a home instead of renting. You only have so much money left over each month. And if we're putting that money towards investing, we're not putting that money towards bad debt. We're not putting that money towards emergency fund. We're not putting that money towards a down payment on a house, right? So we can make that financial decision in the near future, right? It's not to say that you can't do both at the same time. Like if you have $1,000 left over each month, 500 towards debt, 500 towards investment, you could do that, right? But from a general standpoint, my advice is to build the foundations first. Build your emergency fund. Pay off your bad debt. Buy a house instead of rent. At least the first two, right? It's pay off your bad debt, build an emergency fund. Then after that, once those are done, hopefully they're done for good. Emergency fund's built, bad debt's paid off. Now you can take that extra money that you were putting previously towards those goals and now start putting it into the stock market. I can't guarantee anything in the stock market, but I can guarantee you that if you save $30,000, you'll sleep a heck of a lot better and be really grateful, not if, but when an emergency pops up, right? And so just some things to think about there, right? And I always try to study and apply Proverbs to my overall money management in addition to that investment advice. And so Proverbs talks a lot about diligence, planning, generosity, and contentment. All 4 of those are so super important when it comes to faithful financial stewardship or managing our money in a way that glorifies God. Diligence is doing it with intention, like caring about it, right? Not from an idolization standpoint, but because God entrusted us to be a good steward of our money, right? It's how we manage our money is a big sign of our faith and our gratitude for what God has currently blessed us with. Planning, same thing. Like, you can't, I always tell my wife, she probably hates this quote now, but I always say, like, if you fail to plan, you better plan to fail, right? And so planning is just a part of diligence. Generosity reflects God's character, right? He calls us to be generous, and contentment is not complacency. Contentment is, I am grateful for what I have, and that is the key to stewardship, right? And then the last thing with, Proverbs with King Solomon, I don't know if you guys know this, but like the author of Proverbs is King Solomon, who, if he was alive today, would be the richest man to ever live. He'd be worth $1.3 trillion. The crazy part about King Solomon is he didn't pray to God for wealth. He prayed to God for wisdom. And as a byproduct of becoming extremely wise, he became the wealthiest man to ever live. And so my point is, seek wisdom. Don't seek get rich quick schemes, right? And, don't think that you're literally just gonna, download a budgeting app and everything's gonna work out, or you're gonna tithe once and everything's gonna be great. Seek wisdom first, right? And then the wiser you become, the wealthier you become, because wisdom, being wise, is just being skilled at living, all right? And so habit number 8, money as a tool and a faithful testimony. I love the quote. I might have made it up, might have heard it somewhere, but money is a great tool, but a terrible God, right? And so if you look at all of the scriptures where people think that God is shunning money, it's just not true. What God is trying to shun and or warn against is idolizing money, right? Just like in the passage in Timothy that says that people massively misconstrue all the time. They say that money is the root of all evil. The real quote is, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And if you dive into the biblical translation of love, to love something means to idolize it. And you can only idolize one thing at a time. So if you're idolizing money, guess you're not leaving room for God, right? And that's where it becomes wrong, right? But money is an incredible tool, right? Think about money as a hammer, right? A hammer can be used to do what? It could be used to build a village, or it could be used to tear down a village. The outcome is usually dictated by the human being behind it operating it, right? And so I just find that if you seek God, Matthew 6:33, he will transform your heart. He'll transform your desires, like we talked about in the very beginning of this. And then when that happens, you can be trusted with money. What happens is money just doesn't change your character, it magnifies it. Right? So if we seek God first and seek transformation from him holistically, right, our character and our desires will be transformed to be more like him, to be more like Jesus. And all money's going to do is going to exemplify or magnify that character. And so money is an amazing tool, but a terrible God. Seek God, idolize God, rely on God, solely focus and put all of your hope and faith in God. But then at the same time, understand that there's many beautiful tools, people, and opportunities on earth that God is calling us to use in a specific way, money being one of them, right? And so I promise you, it is very possible to be a strong person of faith, to resemble Jesus Christ and be a great human being who has a heart after God's own character and also have a lot of money at the same time, right? And I hope that you are able to do that, if God has that as a part of your plan. And so I hope that these 8 faith-based habits that completely transformed my financial life and allowed me to achieve complete financial freedom while building a 7-figure business that honors God served you today. The beautiful thing about habits is they compound. They compound over time, just like money grows through compound interest. These small daily faith-based actions create massive results over long periods of time if you stay consistent and faithful and lead to true freedom. But here's the truth: knowing these habits isn't just enough. Information doesn't create transformation, application does. And so you need a system to implement them and stay accountable on your journey to financial freedom. And so now you have 2 options. I like to tell people, you can try to implement all of this on your own, knowing all the problems you'll face. And, I wish you the best of luck, right? I'm praying for you, right? But you could be wise and seek wise counsel and work with me and my team through our Good Steward program, where it is extremely proven that we're able to walk you through implementing these exact faith-based habits and building a financial foundation that leads to true freedom while honoring God. And if you're ready to move from financial chaos to complete financial freedom while staying true to your faith, then click the first link in this description to learn about how we can help you become the faithful steward God has called you to be. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more biblical financial wisdom, and I'll see you in the next video.